Good afternoon, folks, and good morning to our West Coasters. My name is Craig Burstady. I'm the Deputy Assistant Secretary for Regional Affairs at EDA. And I am really pleased to be collaborating with my colleague Brian Anderson, the Executive Director of the Interagency Working Group on Coal and Power Plant Communities and Economic Revitalization today on this amazing opportunity to support our coal and power plant communities. I am going to dive into the details of our coal communities commitment very shortly, but I wanted to bring in Brian today to share some important updates on what this awesome interagency working group is up to. And before I turn things over to Brian, I would just like to say doing things in government is tough. It is a big organization, but doing things across 13 different agencies is even tougher. But when you get it right, you can really do some things at scale and have some awesome impacts. And that's what Brian and his team are working on over at the Department of Energy, aligning 13 different agencies to really bring capacity and catalytic change and resources to these communities. So what an exciting, scalable effort this is. Brian, please tell us a little bit more. Eager to hear what you're up to. Thanks for joining us today.
Well, Craig, thank you so much. And I really have so much admiration and thanks out to the Department of Commerce and EDA and certainly the EDA is really leading the charge in trying to get the assistance to coal communities, power plant communities, energy communities across the country. And so it's really a pleasure to work with EDA. Very excited to join you today. And I'm going to keep my comments really brief because the meat of the opportunity for those who are on the webinar today is about the opportunity that the Economic Development Administration is putting on the table out of the Department of Commerce for coal power plants and energy communities. And so, as Craig had mentioned, I'm the executive director of what is called the Interagency Working Group on Coal and Power Plant Communities and Economic Revitalization. And as we look at what this IWG, I'll shorten it to the Interagency Working Group, the IWG, it was established by the President's executive order the first week he was in office. This executive order is the executive order for tackling the climate crisis domestically and abroad. And the section 218 that established the working group is the administration's acknowledgement that, one, we've already been in an energy transition across the country for the last 15 years. In some coal and power plant communities, an economic transition started when we began in mechanization of mining. But certainly over the last 10 years, we've gone from 52% of our electricity being produced from coal to today's less than a quarter, less than 25% of our electricity in the United States being produced by coal. So what that has done to a lot of communities across the country has already begun experiencing the impacts of the energy transition. And so the acknowledgement by the administration is we need to ensure that the workers, the communities, the families, and the towns that have been affected and will continue to be affected as the trajectory of the energy system changes into the future, that we do right by these communities. And so in the executive order, you see here listed 12 agency symbols. I actually then break out the Office of Management and Budget, as Craig mentioned, the 13th agency. I tasked these 13 agencies to put together a report with initial recommendations on how we can catalyze economic activity, robust economic activity, and support workers in the America's energy sector, particularly those affected and soon to be affected by the economic dislocation. Really leading the spear is EDA and the Department of Commerce because the opportunities that will be discussed in this webinar on the economic assistance in communities and the Build Back Better program are really designed to start at the ground, to start empowering communities and do capacity building in communities. And so our plan, coordinating across all of these agencies in a really one unified government approach, but a coordinated approach, to be able to put together the investments that each of the agencies have in different appropriation buckets and apply them to the community. So when we look at, you can see the symbols here for the Department of Treasury, Department of Interior, Department of Ag, Commerce, of course, Labor, Health and Human Services, Transportation, Department of Energy, Education, EPA, the Executive Office of the President that we're on with every week, almost daily, Office of Management Budget, and the Appalachian Regional Commission. It is when we put the power of all of these agencies together, we can start to envision robust economic development plans that touch everything from infrastructure to workforce development, and even to technology advancement and deployment in the communities. And so if we go to the next slide and we look at how we want to do this and where we want to have the biggest impact, in the initial report, there were 25 priority communities that were identified based on the relative employment within the region related to coal and power plant communities. And so this is only the initial indication of these priority communities, but knowing the acknowledgement of the fact that coal communities have already been experiencing economic dislocation, these are the first tranche of the priority communities. Now, as you can see, some of the communities are quite large. It's really a misnomer. It's priority areas. And so we as an interagency working group and across all of the agencies know full well that these areas are made up of heterogeneous communities that each have their own assets, they have their own visions, they have their own economic redevelopment plans. And so as you'll see, we have 4 different work streams, and one of them is for us to get to know and embed ourselves in the communities themselves, not just the bigger areas that were identified. There's additional analyses that are coming that we're working on in the IWG and at NETL, the National Energy Technology Laboratory that I lead, on the analysis of the impact of the energy sector on taxes, on economic and environmental and energy justice, oil and gas communities, and understanding the potential impact of any shifts in the energy sector as we move forward. So if we go to the next slide, our biggest bang for our buck is how we can coordinate, catalyze, and target the investments across the federal government into the communities, and that's why we have such a robust group of agencies in the interagency working group. In the initial report, we identified $38 billion of potential funding that could be applied across all of the agencies to coal, power plants, and energy communities for economic revitalization. The $38 billion in potential funding are across 60 different existing authorities in the federal government. So certainly our job as the IWG is to help coordinate across 60 different federal funding authorities, 13 different agencies, but to be able to take the different types of funding and leverage them together so that we do create the catalyst for communities to find their own competitive advantage. So ultimately, the targeted investments are to be the catalyst so that the private sector see the community's competitive advantage and create the private sector long-term fundamental investments that'll change the economies of communities and create diversity in those economies. So on the next slide is just an overview of how to get to know us, how to be able to follow what we're doing in the IWG. You will learn about our 4 different work streams if you go and visit. The 4 different work streams are community engagement that I mentioned. It really is about the community trying to empower, again, love that EDA is the tip of the spear here, to empower communities to design their own pathways forward. And so the stakeholder engagement is for us to learn about how we can best support communities. And a great way for us to be connected is if you can follow us at energycommunities@netl.doe.gov. This may change soon to just simply energycommunities.gov. You can follow us on Twitter, Facebook, LinkedIn, and all the like. And then if we go to the next slide, there is really a call to action. And it really is about how we can engage with communities through a lot of stakeholder engagement. We're going to be on the ground in communities across the country. We're going to have webinars and technical workshops where we are trying to build the coalitions and build the matching funds that are necessary to unlock all the federal funding. We'll do this through the targeted stakeholder engagement, through targeting the federal investments and coordinating across the agencies. And ultimately, we are trying to squeeze the funnel on both ends, meaning in communities, we want to have capacity building. Again, EDA is such a strong partner on this one, to build the capacity in the communities, to write to envision and write the types of proposals that will get the federal funding and unlock it. But then also on the federal side, we don't want you to have to write proposals to 13 different agencies. And so we want to create an infrastructure that does the job of coordinating across the federal government so that you have a one-stop shop. You can come to the IWG, and we make the connections to EDA, to the Department of Treasury, to other parts of the Department of Commerce and the other agencies, so that you have a one-stop shop. And when I'm saying you, I mean you, the community leaders who are on here, the community developers. And so we are taking it very seriously to lower that activation barrier for you to unlock the federal funding that we're trying to target. So with that, I thank you for the opportunity to steal some of your time on this webinar. I am greatly looking forward to learning about these EDA opportunities and how to unlock these opportunities for communities. Craig, thank you so much for having me, and I'll pass it back to you.
Brian, the honor and privilege is ours. All of us at EDA feel strongly that economic development is a team sport. You've got to have all participants at the table to do meaningful, catalytic economic development. And I couldn't be more humbled to be a part of this effort, of this multi-agency effort. And while we don't have 38 billion ourselves, I really feel honored, like I said, to be the tip of the spear in this effort. I think it represents EDA's strengths so well. Our mission is to lead the federal economic development agenda. We do this through capacity building grants. And we do this in communities all over the nation, from urban to rural, in technology-based economic development to basic infrastructure, workforce development, and so much more. I think our sweet spot is a lot of what Brian was talking about, finding ways to make targeted catalytic investments that's going to change the trajectory and the capacity of a local economy. This is unprecedented times for EDA. We have been appropriated $3 billion through the American Rescue Plan Act. It is a really historic opportunity for us to rethink some of the ways that we do economic development, how we've designed our programs. But at our core, in the core of the programming, I think it still reflects our best and truest asset, which is the ability to meet communities where they're at. So whether it's our indigenous communities or perhaps some of our urban innovation centers, or those economies hit hardest through travel, tourism, and outdoor recreation, our $3 billion portfolio here was designed to meet the needs of the economic times of today. We want to build back better. We want to do things differently and with more intention, and we want to do it in all communities. And we're doing that through three main buckets of work. That's jobs for today. We have two programs focused on really driving and supporting jobs for today. That's our Good Jobs Challenge and our Travel, Tourism, and Outdoor Recreation program. Communities Built for All, three programs focused on that, and Regions for the Future. I won't get into all of these today. We have had a full suite of webinars and outreach ongoing, so there is more information out there on a number of these programs already, including existing EDA 101s on all of these programs. But today I'd like to focus on our Economic Adjustment and Assistance, our Build Back Better Regional Challenge, how that relates to our commitment to coal communities. I'll get into that in just a moment, but first I want to share what's guiding all of this work, what is our framing principles, or our North Stars for all of this whole portfolio is EDA's investment priorities. This is our list, and I want to point out two things across these before moving into programs. One, if we're going to build back better, if we're going to do things differently and truly take advantage of this historic moment, this $3 billion for economic development, we've got to do things equitably. We've got to build more inclusive, resilient regional economies that are reaching, engaging, and supporting all citizens within those regions and communities. I mentioned resilience. I think that is so important for today's topic, our commitment to coal communities, as we think about ways to create more economic diversification, capacity, and accelerate growth and opportunity to make these regions, well, to help them recover first and build greater resilience so we don't face such challenges during tumultuous economic times like this recent year. So many more that I think are very relevant to our coal and power plant communities. I know we have strong manufacturing bases in these communities. I know many of them, as we transition from coal, are looking forward to more technology-driven economic development, more environmentally sustainable development, and clean energy, clean technology. There's a lot of ways that I think this group of stakeholders can benefit from or participate in EDA's programming. So what is this coal's communities commitment? Across our $3 billion portfolio, EDA has committed to invest $300 million into our coal communities. But first, I do want to highlight that we're going to hit that commitment in two specific programs, but communities are eligible for our entire portfolio where there's alignment, both on project type and eligibility. So please don't confuse the commitment with eligibility. You can participate in the whole portfolio. I'll explain more in a bit. We're also committing to providing planning and technical assistance grants through both some non-competitive state planning grants. We have already invited all 50 states and 9 territories to receive a non-competitive $1 million planning grant. And for those states that have hard-hit coal communities, we certainly do welcome their ideas and strategies to leverage those planning resources in ways that will help those communities develop strategies, plans, and resources to move forward. So that's one way we're doing this, planning and technical assistance. We also have this really unique research and networks program, where we're hoping to support communities of practice through network development, communities of practice where organizations are all working together to think through strategies and how to navigate economic development in similar environments, whether it's rural or innovation-based or, yes, whole communities. How can we do this better? How can we learn from one another through practice sharing? So I think that webinar on this program specifically is happening tomorrow, 2 p.m. Eastern. So if you're interested in maybe participating in, or excuse me, I should say, starting a national community of practice, stay tuned for that information. And I've mentioned this. We will have a focus in 2 of our programs I'll cover shortly to meet and achieve our $3 million whole communities commitment. So what is it that defines a coal community? What makes a coal community eligible? Well, simply put, it is a community that has been negatively impacted by the transition or downturn in these industries. And it doesn't necessarily, it is not limited to just the physical spaces or geographies that are doing the mining. It can also be those that are processing and firing those power plants or transporting in between. So logistics and supply chain can equally participate. Because of this kind of fluid environment where certain communities are getting hit in different times as this industry quickly shifts and transitions, we do not have a predefined list. It is fluid and evolving. We just ask that you demonstrate your eligibility by providing appropriate statistics, economic data, and evidence. And we're happy to work with you on that. I'll talk about our economic development representatives or EDRs that can help communities navigate that in a little bit. So finally, our full array or menu of 6 programs through EDA's American Rescue Plan strategy. Here they are. But today, I'm again going to focus my energy on 2 programs, the Buildback Better Regional Challenge and the Economic Adjustment and Assistance Program. This is where our $300 million commitment is going to come from. But you heard me say it earlier. Remember, folks, you are eligible to participate in any of these programs where projects align, project work aligns, and your eligibility aligns. So maybe you're a coal community that is also a tribal community. We certainly would welcome proposals under our Indigenous Communities Program, for example. We have specific webinars, informational materials on those other programs. Today, we'll be focusing on Build Back Better and the Economic Adjustment and Assistance Program. So the Build Back Better Regional Challenge, this is the big one, $1 billion. Folks are talking about it from coast to coast because I do believe that this is an unprecedented strategy here in the United States for cluster-based economic development. We're looking for projects or proposals, I should say, where communities and regions are coming together as an aligned coalition across a minimum of 3 or a maximum of 8 projects that are supporting a shared vision for an industry or industries across the region. So on the right here, you'll see a very generic example for manufacturing, ag tech, or services. But I think what I hope as you look at this visual and you dig into this program a little bit more, you'll see that it really is designed to be flexible and meet the needs of our regions and our industries where they're at. There is no, I'm going to foot stomp this, there is no magic formula for types of projects or size of projects, as long as they fit within our general framework. Certainly that they're eligible activities, but most importantly, they're aligned, sharing a vision, and working together to elevate outcomes across the region. I will talk through an ag tech cluster, for example. Here on the right, you see 3 locations. It could be fairly spread apart or fairly concentrated, depending on the connectivity of the region, transportation and economic activity, or maybe even commuting routes, for example. There's a lot of ways that we could look at the definition or the conditions of a regional economy. And in an ag tech example, we might have a growing density or amount of activity in an ag tech cluster, and maybe there's a transportation hub that is working to push out to export more agriculture because of increased productivity. And in that transportation hub, it is certainly plausible that to increase commerce, to increase transit, we could do a transformative infrastructure project that might increase an airport's ability to receive larger cargo planes, to increase capacity on a railhead, or maybe even in a port, some sort of extension of a pier. There's a lot of ways that EDA has helped increase transit activity within a region. If you are increasing that transit activity and you're able to ship more product out, I think farmers and our growers might be interested in being more efficient, growing more products, so we can leverage that export capacity. So perhaps in our rural communities, we might think about some workforce training or some entrepreneurship that's going to help innovate, increase efficiency, increase productivity, so that we can leverage that transit and export opportunities. And maybe within an anchor community of sorts or a mid-sized town, if our farmers, growers are increasing productivity, if we have increased export opportunity, we may want to think about investing in the future to make sure this region can maintain and grow its competitiveness. So there might be opportunity to think about innovation, maybe an experimental research and development and commercialization effort in a community college, an HBCU, or a tier 1 research university. There's many ways that I could see community partners coming together to collectively align efforts and support transformational growth in such an example. Please think about this as a tool to meet the needs and the opportunities where you're at. We absolutely hope to support both new and emerging clusters. So you may have a long-standing established industry that is looking to grow, or a very new one, kind of like the ag tech example that I just discussed. What you're looking at here for the Build Back Better Regional Challenge is our basic process, how we're going to do this, a 2-phased approach. If this is catching your attention, folks, please, I really encourage you to check out a more detailed dive into the program itself. We just had our Build Back Better Regional Challenge webinar earlier this week. But phase 1 of this, proposals due October, I think 17th or 19th, if I'm not mistaken. Phase 1 proposals are are going to be awarded to 50 to 60 regions, and going to amount to up to $500,000 per region. We hope that those REISs are going to increase, those awards are going to increase capacity and help communities pull together more details, greater capacity, greater leverage, so that they can submit really ready, shovel ready, if you will, project investment ready projects come March 15th. Those collections of projects should amount to an approximate range, emphasis on approximate, we have some flexibility here, between 25 million to 75 million. So it might be 5 projects at $5 million each, summing to 25 million. For those larger communities or regions that might have a little more capacity, we will entertain proposals that sum to 100 million. I don't think that will be the norm or an average for sure, but a range somewhere between this 25 to 75 million is certainly very plausible. With the Build Back Better Regional Challenge, I think if you picked up on the theme here, it's collaboration, alignment, and increased capacity across that team of actors. At the top of the call, I mentioned economic development is absolutely a team sport. It is Summer Olympics time, and it is a theme of the summer. It is a theme for EDA right now. But I also recognize that not all communities might have the partnerships or the readiness to collaborate across such an array of projects all at once. That's okay, because that is where our economic adjustment and assistance program can come to play, where $200 million of this program we will commit to our cold communities. It is our most flexible American Rescue Plan program, and we can fund non-construction and construction activities across this NOFO, and it truly is able to support the full range of economic development activities. Now, when I say full range of economic development activities, I mean exactly that. It is very flexible, folks. There's a lot we can do with this, but it must all be aligned around creating jobs, retaining jobs, and increasing economic capacity. I love entrepreneurship as an example in these communities where there's a real need to rethink what industry activity, what types of businesses we want to create more diversification. One of the best ways to do that is to enable entrepreneurs to start, build, and scale companies. If you do have a concentration of growing businesses, maybe you're a transitioning coal community and working to embrace clean energy, solar, wind, for example, and you have a need to train workers in a new type of manufacturing, a new type of maintenance, or work overall, workforce development programs might be extremely relevant. Lastly, if you're not quite ready, first and foremost, we have technical assistance and planning capacity as well. Maybe you're in the earlier stage here and starting to just think through what really needs to happen next year and in the years to come to lay the groundwork for some of this capacity building activity later on. If you're seeing and feeling a theme here, I hope it's that we look for ways, EDA looks for ways to add capacity to a community through specific targeted investments that can change the trajectory and economic activity in the region. Increasing workforce readiness, increasing entrepreneurship activity, increasing readiness through technical assistance and planning on the public works and the infrastructure side. It could be extending a pier, extending an airport runway to increase, yes, redundant here, intentionally increase capacity through transit and economic activity. So also in this last point, we are always about the long game. We want projects that are going to bring longer term impacts, sustainable infrastructure where things, if we help start something, build something, or create something, it may very well be there for decades to come and bringing that activity and that commerce for generations. That's the type of project that is really transformative for us and we're really excited about. A couple specific examples. I won't read through these all, but before I jump into them, these are fairly recent projects made in the last 2 or 3 years, I think. Some through our CARES Act supplemental, in fact. So our first COVID economic relief supplemental. But the one way you can really get familiar with EDA's projects is just go to our website and go to the newsroom. Check out our press clips. I think on a weekly basis, we are sometimes pushing out dozens of project investments, especially when times are busy. I think we're approaching the end of fiscal year, and I anticipate you'll see a lot of updates from us in the next couple of months. So check that out, our social media. We're always highlighting our projects. And of course, check out our newsletter as well. That's another great way to get familiar with the type of work we're funding. But I highlighted a little bit of workforce capacity building earlier. This is a great example that we did in North Dakota, helping increase line worker training efforts in Mandan, North Dakota. I mentioned entrepreneurship earlier as well. We did this in Southeast Ohio with the Bobcat effort, building opportunities beyond coal and accelerating transition. Bobcat Network. This community recognized that they needed to diversify. And what better way to do that than a regional effort to support entrepreneurship, workforce development. These are the things that can build the new businesses and the new businesses that are going to be the businesses and the commerce of the future for this region. But also looking across this array here from North Dakota to Ohio to Wyoming to Pennsylvania to Kentucky, I think complementing Brian's comments earlier, EDA is active in all regions that are working to transition away from coal and power plant commerce. So I hope that you find ways to connect with EDA's portfolio in your region. Our flexible programs can meet the needs of your economic development needs today, and really encourage you to get to know these programs better. They are live, and we're actually actively accepting applications today. So yes, the notices of funding opportunities in these programs are readily available. You can check them out on our website. And once you get familiar with them, once you've reviewed some of the materials, maybe this webinar and the deeper dive on Build Back Better or our economic adjustment and assistance webinar, which is coming next week, once you've reviewed them and are prepared with some specific questions and you really want to dig into some project ideas, I highly recommend you reach out to your economic development representative. In fact, I think we have one joining us here shortly for some Q&A. Our economic development representatives are assigned to every state and territory. They are our front-line support, our eyes and ears on the ground, and that help us reach our customers and really execute and operate our programs in the front lines. What I also love about our EDRs is that because they represent states and they're in the field and working with our economic development districts, with our university partners, and so much more, so many more stakeholders. There are also experts in economic development. And if you want to think through some real strategy, I think these are great folks to know and learn from. So please, if you don't know your economic development representative and you're trying to do this challenging work right now in coal communities, I'd highly encourage you to get to know them and learn from them. All right, we have a bunch of resources. Here's a quick list of what we're both posting real soon, and once posted, we'll be regularly updating in some cases, like our frequently asked questions. We're continuing to field exciting and unique questions from across the nation, really. And so our FAQs documents will be a great source to get a pulse on what's being asked and how folks are navigating these programs, what types of strategies or work they're considering, and we'll be providing our best guidance in answer form into these FAQs on a fairly regular basis. We'll also be updating our website with some helpful tutorials via video and helping folks understand how to register in grants.gov, how to work through some application basics such as budget, materials, forms, things like that. So stay tuned for that, probably updated in the next couple of weeks once folks have gotten some time to get through the programming itself. So you all have heard from me way too much by now. So I would rather you hear from more of our experts and some that are doing this work in the field. So right now at this time, I'd like to invite some of my colleagues to help work through some helpful questions. Our Deputy Chief Counsel, Chris Anderson, who really navigates such an array of interesting topics and detailed questions for us. Chris, I'd love for you to help me on number one here. Do economic development projects for coal communities have to be directly connected to the coal industry?
No, Craig. The projects can be anything that is going to assist that coal community to develop its economy and recover from changes in the coal industry and from economic effects related to the pandemic. So any project that would diversify the economy, that would bring new industries into would potentially.
Yes, thanks, Chris. That's a great point. I know our West Virginia Economic Development Representative, Tracy Rowan, has helped a number of communities in West Virginia navigate that very question. What should we be doing next? How might we diversify, and how could we leverage EDA's support for coal communities? Tracy, I'd like to throw this your way, where you've worked with a lot of communities through our Assistance to Coal Communities program. Basic question here, but really important. I recently received a grant through ACC. Are we eligible here?
Yes, you are eligible. Receiving a previous ACC award does not prohibit a new application. The good news is you've already shown you're eligible as a coal community. For example, it could be a new recovery and resiliency building application, or it could be an initiative related to the previously funded ACC project to support your community's ongoing recovery efforts. So you are most certainly welcome to apply through these new initiatives.
Thanks, Tracy. And you mentioned a couple, one word really, that I think is helpful there, which is like new. We're always looking for maybe not necessarily, it doesn't have to be new ideas, but rather we do want to be cognizant of previous investments and making sure we're finding ways to build on previous work, learnings, or practices. So it's also possible that maybe a planned project didn't go as well as expected, and we may need to invest slightly differently in the same community. And that's okay too, but we want to just make sure that we're recognizing that and building upon that. So if you have benefited from other programs, other previous ACC investments, think about ways that you could leverage this portfolio to build on those prior efforts. It doesn't have to necessarily be brand new, but I think new or building on an approach is a great theme there. Thanks, Tracy. Great points. What are the match requirements for coal communities? Chris, Deputy Chief Counsel, tell us a little bit about match considerations for these communities, please.
Sure, Craig. So the match requirements actually vary a bit amongst the 6 ARPA NOFOs, but for both the EAA NOFO and the Build Back Better Regional Challenge, EDA generally expects to fund 80% of project costs, which means that the remaining 20% of project costs will have to come from non-federal sources. Those sources can be cash or in-kind contributions. EDA does have the discretion to go up to a 100% grant rate in particular circumstances based on the needs of the region and the applicant. Considerations the EDA will take into account in making those determinations are things like whether the applicant has exhausted its effective taxing and borrowing capacity, the economic distress of the region based on considerations such as unemployment rate and low per capita income, and the extent of the coronavirus pandemic on the region. The last thing I'll say on that is as is true with all of EDA's programs, projects of Indian tribes are eligible for a grant rate of up to 100%.
Great point. We do recognize the challenging distress that many of our indigenous communities have experienced, and that 100% grant rate for those tribal communities is really important and hopefully valuable as our tribal communities navigate recovery. Next up, I am pleased to turn to Susan Brem, our regional director for our Chicago regional office, covering our Midwest states. I know Susan and her team navigate a lot of rural communities in the Midwest, and where we're seeing some exciting trends in outdoor recreation as places in Southeast Ohio or Indiana and Wisconsin are reimagining some of the ways they can leverage their natural assets. So Susan, this was a good one for you. Will trail and outdoor recreation projects be considered for coal community investments?
Thanks, Craig. That's a great question. And I want to mention also Michigan, Illinois, and Minnesota, those trails in those states. No, I mean, I think, a lot of coal impacted communities are in really gorgeous, beautiful areas and lend themselves naturally to development of trails and other outdoor recreation activities. And so I really see some real opportunities here to diversify the economies, continue to help diversify the economies in those areas away from coal and toward some of these other resources that are true assets and are really unique to a lot of these areas. So, whether those projects come in as under the Economic Adjustment Assistance NOFO, or whether they come in under the Travel and Tourism NOFO, I think they could be competitive in either category. And I would encourage anyone who has this type of project to work closely with their economic development representative to determine, within our region, where that project might be most competitive. But yeah, I think these could be really interesting projects in coal communities.
Susan, I actually am personally familiar with a couple scenarios that have come across our desks lately with communities navigating projects that might cross a state line, Ohio to Indiana. Is that okay? Could EDA consider projects that are maybe a bit broader and might crossing on a trail, for example, might cross over into 2 states? Is that plausible? Can we consider that?
Yeah, absolutely. I think, if it the two states happen to be within a single EDA region, great. That's an easy project to coordinate. If it crosses EDA regions, we are happy to coordinate with our friends in Denver and Austin and Atlanta and Philly and Seattle. However we need to work with those projects, we will.
Yeah. Thanks for driving that home. I will also add that that resonates with our desire to help communities support the most catalytic, compelling projects. So if there is a really transformational economic development project that you think aligns with some of this portfolio, as Susan said, please engage our economic development representatives, and we'll help work through where that might fit. Travel and tourism, or the Economic Adjustment Assistance Portfolio, EAA. This is we recognize that these communities really need support, and we want to meet you as best as we can. So while I've got you, a different type of trail is that of innovation and broadband. So how about broadband projects? What should communities know?
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, we've all seen how important, how critical broadband has been over the past 18 months. It's really driven home the basic utility nature of broadband. So, I would say whether you're at the stage where you need to investigate your options and determine how to develop a broadband network, or if you're at the stage where you've done that planning and you're ready to implement, EDA can fund either of those approaches. Regardless of where you are on that path, there are options, and I think we are really seeing just how critical these projects are to communities across the United States. Yeah.
Thanks so much, Susan. Back to our other regional expert, Tracy Rowan, in West Virginia. I know as the West Virginia Economic Development Representative, you've navigated this question a lot, I'm sure. Can a project area without a coal-fired power plant or coal mining qualify for coal funding? So I don't have a power plant, I don't have mining. Could I qualify?
Yes. And it does happen a lot in West Virginia. As you had previously referenced, related industry and supply chain jobs and businesses that did suffer as a direct result of the downturn in the coal industry, in many cases qualifies you as a coal community. As an example, we've had numerous areas in West Virginia that lost jobs and businesses in the metal fabrication sector, which we can tie very clearly to the coal industry. And those communities have come in and successfully received ACC funding in the past, and I know some of them are looking at this NOFO and the Economic Adjustment Assistance Program. So yes, work with your EDR. We understand that impact in many cases, just because your particular county didn't have a coal-fired power plant or a coal mine that closed, you've got documented coal impact, and your EDR can help you navigate what you need to do and what kind of statistics you need to provide to prove that.
Great. Yeah, the statistics piece, we don't want that to be intimidating. And our EDRs, Tracy's point, really know our states and know the industries. And if you're part of that supply chain impact and might have a little bit of indirect impacts, we could certainly help you figure out eligibility and how to build a narrative around that. So Susan and Tracy, thanks so much for taking time today. I know you guys are really busy engaging customers right now in the field. We'll close out today with our Deputy Chief Counsel, Chris. We talked a lot about different NOFOs here and finding a fit. Does EDA encourage or discourage submitting applications for the same project to different NOFOs? So a little bit different than what Susan and I discussed before. The same project, what if I want to put the same project to different NOFOs to see like competitiveness? Should I do that?
So no, you should only submit an application for a project to a single NOFO. If you're unsure of where your project would fit best, we would definitely encourage you to reach out to your EDR who can help you figure that out. And just as a further point, I would note that the NOFOs all provide that EDA does reserve the right to move projects among NOFOs if we feel like an application that we receive under one NOFO really belongs under a different NOFO.
Yeah, that last part, Chris, is really important. So I'm going to foot stomp that. If we see more exciting alignment in another funding opportunity, we will do that adjustment for you. We'll take it and put it in another competition. So don't worry about feeling the need to apply to everything. It actually doesn't help you, and it doesn't help us, because we're actually then having to work through more applications, and you're having to do more paperwork. So as Tracy said, and Susan, if you're kind of on the fence between where the best fit might be, but you've got a really exciting, compelling idea, please bring your questions to your regional office and your economic development representative. So with that, I just want to emphasize and close. We're at the top of the hour today. I know we couldn't get to every question that's out there. There's a lot of technical ones that are really specific, and I'd encourage you, if you do think you're eligible and you're in line for this funding, or I should say aligned with this funding, and you could be a good fit here, please read the notice of funding opportunities. They are available, they are out there and ready for you. Once you've read them, once you've gotten familiar, the second thing I'd ask you to do is organize a couple specific questions that help highlight what you're thinking about, what your project is, and then prepare those for your economic development representative. This is an unprecedented time for EDA, which means an unprecedented amount of engagement. So help us help you, folks. Please bring your questions, but we'd really appreciate if you would read some of the materials first. That way you will be more informed and be able to ask the right questions, and we can help you more efficiently and get you going sooner. We've got a lot of work to do this next year. All of our funds must be spent by next fall, September of 2022. It's important because we've got to get things going again. We've got to recover from this. We've got a lot of economic work to do. So I don't want to close on that note, though. We've got a lot of work to do, but I will close with this. We've got to do it right. We've got to do it more inclusively, with longer term vision. So when you're pulling together your projects, when you're thinking things through, please think about quality over quantity. I guarantee you that will set you up for more success. So we have time to work with communities. We've got a lot to do this next year and a half or so, but please think about where you fit best into this portfolio, and then engage your EDR with some great questions. Folks, it's been a real pleasure. I love talking about EDA, clearly. I hope you found this webinar enlightening and helpful. We look forward to future engagements. Tomorrow's webinar is the Research and Networks Notice of Funding Opportunity. Stay tuned for that. Social media will be regularly updating and also regularly updating our website. Have a wonderful afternoon. Stay tuned. We'll catch you next time.